Hi, how are you today? I'm David Fox, and today I am going to be giving you a 5 card sample spread, a tarot card reading based on the questions, what do I need to know now? And what should I focus on going forward? Honestly, a friend of mine gave these questions to me and told me to make a video for him. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm just sharing this with all of you right now. So I believe it should be a really good learning video. You'll see how I create a basic 5 card spread. You'll see how I attribute it to various spheres on the tree of life. That's this glyph that you see behind me here. For you who are not familiar with what the tree of life is, it's based on an ancient mystic system called the Kabbalah from the Hebrew tribes. And what the premise is that God once upon a time evolved itself, investing itself with various limitations and capacities so that it could manifest as humanity and enjoy the experience of life. And boom, here we are, billions of years later, or whatever it is, however long evolution took. Here we are, invested with all of these capacities to enjoy our life. And the spiritual seeker, the spiritual aspirant, is always finding him or herself possessed of this one question: how do I get back to God consciousness? How do I take myself further on my spiritual evolution? And that's what I'm going to use the cards today to show you, because the Kabbalah on this tree of life here, it shows how the God manifested itself into humanity, but it also shows the spiritual practitioner how we go forward through these various dimensions of our physical being, of our existential being, on various paths into various dimensions of mind, into various states of being, so that we can come into centered Christ consciousness, so that we can evolve into enlightened consciousness, enlightened being. What I'm going to show you today is only 5 cards. I have 78 cards. Only 5 cards is not a lot, but I'm going to show you 5 cards and place them on the tree so that you can see the conscious evolution of a man going towards his destiny in response to certain questions. 5 cards only. So it's going to be a fast reading. And I'm going to use my favorite deck. It's called, I think it's just called the Thoth deck. It was created by a lad called Aleister Crowley way back at the end of the occult renaissance in Europe. He was a magician and occultist, and he created a pretty fantastic set of cards, lovely art here. But I'm going to show you 5 cards, and these 5 cards are going to speak to 5 different aspects of your being. I'm going to talk to the current condition of the querent. Let's just call him Cal for the sake of this video. It's not his real name, but privacy and stuff. So Cal asked the question, what do I need to know now, and what should I focus on going forward? So I'm going to show one card that talks to Cal's current condition, and then I'm going to show 2 more cards that give Cal choices going forward. There's always a choice going into the future, because another of the basic premises is that we have choices going forward. The destiny is not set in stone. We have choices. There are other philosophies that say, that we can't do anything without God's intention, so to speak, that there is no such thing as free will, but that's not what the tarot cards say, and that's not what my reading says anyway. My reading is very, very much dependent on your choices going forward, your freedom, so to speak. So I'll show 1 talking to the current condition, 2 talking to future options going forward, 1 more talking to influences, things that are currently influencing Cal, what's creating that current condition, why these 2 options happen to be like that. And then the final card, I will give some advice. So without further ado, I think these things are shuffled enough. 1 more cut just for good luck. Boom, we are ready. Cal, this is your life. Here we go. Ba-bum. The Prince of Wands. Check it out. The Prince of Wands. Isn't that a beautiful card? All right, now just to keep this, just so that you can read this easily while I do the reading. Just gonna set this up here. Just put the Prince right there. And keep those cards there. All right, so the Prince of Wands shows himself firmly in his heart center right now. He's called the Christ. He's called the Christ consciousness. He is centered in his heart. He is beyond He has brought himself beyond judgment. The Christ center is the center of the Bodhisattva. He is not yet the Buddha. He has kept himself purposely on this plane in order to help people, in order to serve, in order to give. And he has kept himself here until all others are ready to go home. The prince, oh, and God, maybe you guys just aren't familiar with the tarot cards in general. The tarot cards are broken into 4 suits: the cups, the discs, the swords, and the wands. The discs talk about physicality, our physical body, our environment, our condition. Swords talk about our mentality, our cognition, intellection, how we use the brain, how we use the mind mechanisms. The cups are talking about more fluid stuff, creativity, imagination, and the wands talk about a little bit higher self, something determination, intention, willpower, things like that. And this prince here is the Prince of Wands. So he's centered in his will. He's a very, very determined individual. This is Cal we're talking about right now. Cal, what a determined guy you are. What a focused will you have. You don't take yourself to the right. You don't take yourself to the left. You keep yourself right in the center and you serve from a very, very heart-filled nature. The Prince of Wands. Wow, guy, I didn't know that about you. That's really nice. It's nice to be centered, right? We still have room to grow, and we're not identifying so much with the lower self, the more primordial, fear-based or lower, more suffering nature of our being. But we've brought ourselves up to a certain extent, and that's really nice. And that says a lot about how the future could possibly unfold too. I mean, the future could unfold in 2 different directions, right? We can unfold higher, we can unfold lower. The tarot cards are 78 cards that speak to the entire existence, right? And the entire existence is within our very own selves. Just like it said that heaven is located within you, then hell is also located within you, and every choice to be in any way, it's all located within you. And the prince is centered right in the center of all of that. So what's he going to do? What's he so determined to be? How is he serving? How is he putting out his will to create his path in alignment with his personal vision of joy? Whatever it is, he's certainly got a lot of power, right? Because the prince, located right here, this is sphere number 6 in a grouping of 10 spheres, right? We've evolved from the Godhead all the way down into sphere 10, where we find our feet planted firmly on earth. Okay, well, this querent, Cal, has evolved himself back up to sphere number 6. Let's just drop behind me, sphere number 6. He's got himself halfway up his journey. Now, if I were to tell him what he'd have to focus on going forward, well, that really depends on what his intentions are going forward, because in the heart, it sure seems like the intention is there to serve. What does he need to know now? That's probably going to be talked about in his future options, or what is currently influencing this particular state of being that Cal has created himself into. So let's take a card. Let's talk about option number 1 going forward. It was reversed, but I don't really care much about reversals, only because, oh, hey, Queenie, come back. Only because, yes, we can look at the tree of life as a process of evolution or a process of involution. We can look at it in 2 different ways. And if we did look at the queen reversed, we would see her going in this direction. She's either going to be going down this way or she's going to be coming down towards the center. But I prefer to do a reading from a perspective of evolution, that we're all going someplace and we're intending to be going forward. So I'm looking at it from the center of existence, going forward into both the center where the mother is located, where the queen is located here in sphere number 3, and her approach to the father here in sphere number 1. I like to keep them in the position of evolution. So the prince's mama, the queen. Now, the queens are a center of intuitive understanding. And the querent, Cal, is actually a very intuitive guy. He's an energy worker. He is I don't know how much information I have to give you about him, but he's a magical kind of guy. And he does a lot to work with people, and he helps people a lot. And this field of the tarot work and counseling and energetics and spiritual therapy, well, this is right up his alley. And intuitive understanding is a really good thing to be in touch with. Cal is in his heart, and going forward on his own personal evolution, he might connect with that intuitive understanding at a intellectual level. What does it mean to connect with your intuition intellectually? Well, perhaps it means that he's going to study. What does he need to know right now is the question. And maybe that means that what he needs to know right now is how to develop these intuitive faculties much more precisely, much more impeccably, in order to do the job that he has chosen to do, right? In order to further his path. It could only help him to develop that intuitive understanding even more, to further his own spiritual evolution, his own life evolution. It could only help him as well to balance that intuitive understanding with an inspirational knowledge. We need knowledge and understanding to take it forward in a very impeccable way in order to serve humanity. And that's exactly what Cal wants to do right now. So the queen that we're looking at here, she is the Queen of Swords, whereas the prince is the Prince of Wands. Cal is determined, his will is strong, his intention is going forward. Okay, the swords talk about intellectual activity and cognition and the approach to the mental world. The question of what do I need to focus on right now? Well, focus is an intellectual activity. So my reading, my interpretation is you might want to focus on developing that intuitive approach to that career that you've chosen for yourself, which is the service of humanity through these magical arts. But there's one more choice going forward in a 5-card draw. The second future choice here we have is the Father, the King of Wands. Now, this is exactly what I was talking about just a second ago. If you have intuitive understanding on the one side, then it should very well be balanced with inspirational knowledge on the other side. And the king is precisely that inspirational knowledge. We find the queen in sphere number 3. We find the king in sphere number 2. In this deck, I'm sorry, it's called the Knight of Wands, but the Knight, the king, they're the same guy. The king and the queen, balanced options going forward. The highest faculties right here in your temples, if the crown is, right? So my option going forward, what do I need to know right now and what should I be focusing on? Well, I think you could focus on both of these in tandem. I don't suppose that you have to choose just one. You can choose both of them, right? The intuitive faculty, the knowledge faculty, balance both of those, because if you've got a good base of those, well, you can help the way you want to help. You can serve the way you want to serve. You can be that bodhisattva. You can really, really give to humanity, develop yourself on your own evolution going home, and boom, it's a win-win for everybody, right? Okay, so the Knight of Wands matching with the Prince of Wands. Now we're talking at a will level, at an intention, a determined level. What does it mean to approach intuitive understanding from an intellectual level and inspired knowledge from an intentional level? Well, the learning of intuition more deeply, the conscious development and appreciation of intuition. Perhaps Cal has seen himself so far as a very knowledge-driven individual. Perhaps he's academic. I really don't know how he's studied his path and how he uses his knowledge going forward. But it would appear that just by looking at the fact that the Knight is in the Wands dimension, that he's very determined with his knowledge, that it is a staunch support of his particular approach to his way, to his job. And to continue using that seems to be indicated in the cards, whereas a more intellectual approach to intuitive understanding is being called for, which means that he might want to actually think about, how do I use this more in my approach to people? How could I be more intuitive without relying on the knowledge so much? Because knowledge comes from on high, knowledge comes from academic work, knowledge comes from experience. I may be full of knowledge, and not giving myself over to the natural grace that is given to every human being, not giving myself over to the collective consciousness that supports all of us, not seeing perhaps all of the synchronicities that come into play when I'm putting my intention out there, not responding so much to the nature, but not exactly hoarding, but preferring knowledge over surrender. Okay, perhaps Cal has been preferring to rely on knowledge because he has a treasure chest full of knowledge, and not considering so much that through a surrender to nature, that the very same answers that come from the treasure chest may come, and may come even tenfold. 2 focus points going forward. This is what you need to know right now, Cal. Influences. What is influencing the current condition, and why are these future options being talked about right now? Let me just collect these guys into the center. Okay, look at that. Knowledge comes first. You're a knowledge guy, huh? Influence. You are being influenced by the 10 of discs. How nice for you, Cal. The 10 of discs, 10. So we found ourselves first in the supernal triad, or actually this is the supernal triad, this would be the middle one. But the 10 of discs finds ourselves right here, firmly planted on Earth. The 10 is the Earth, the discs are the Earth aspect, and the card title is wealth. And what this means is that everything has coalesced, everything has come together to manifest on Earth according to beauty, according to how things do evolve. The natural evolution of God is beauty. The natural evolution of God is wealth. We have everything. It was all created, and it is good. And that is Cal's life right now. Cal, you've got it all. And you're being influenced by the fact that it's all come together for you. And because it's all come together for you, you are allowed to go forth and share it with the world. Because it's all come together for you, you have the confidence to go forward and give. Because you have, you can give. Because you're confident, you are strong. Because everything is together and your Maslowian needs are being met, so to speak, okay, you can help others meet their needs too. This is the biggest influence. The biggest influence on your life is that you've got your life together. And so you are allowed to now help others get their lives together as well. So I've got one piece of advice for you going forward, and that is check her out. She is called in some decks strength. And for the purpose of this reading, I will just allow that to be called strength. And where you see her ride is in this path right above the heart center. Right above sphere number 6, we find spheres number 5 and spheres number 4, and strength is the path in between those. And what an advice draw of strength is, in this case, would be to allow yourself to be powerful going forward. Allow yourself. I think that you've actually been doing that, but allow yourself to continue doing what you're doing. What are you focusing on? Okay, empowerment. Perhaps you're focused on empowering yourself, but I believe that you're focused really on empowering others. Where I saw the 2 future options to access the king and the queen, approach the king and the queen, receive from the king and the queen, use the king and the queen. Well, this all speaks to a certain harnessing of power that you have within yourself, a harnessing of potential that you have within yourself. And to ride on the path of strength would suggest that we overcome any particular doubts that we have, because where the strength card rides from in the process of evolution is from the 5s to the 4s. In the process of evolution, she rides from the 5s to the 4s to the 3s to the 2s to the 1s, like this, in a lightning bolt going up, right? If we're proceeding from the Earth sphere, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, like that. She rides from 5 to 4. And what that means is 5 is where we usually find a doubt. 5 is where we usually find a bit of disillusionment. very, very temporarily. And what happens is, because finding ourselves in the very beginning in the sphere of Prince, right? We're heart-centered. We have taken ourselves past the level of intellectual or emotional judgment. We're not going so far to the right and left anymore. We're keeping ourselves centered. We see it, but in order to do anything in this life, in order to wake up in the morning, we do have to judge. And that initial judgment, that first movement out of the heart in order to judge, in order to manifest, in order to accomplish, in order to achieve or do anything, is necessarily going to be met with an initial twinge of doubt, right? What is this the correct way to go? Should I really be moving? Is this proper? Yes, no, now comes into it. Right, wrong, now comes into it. Left, right, up, down, duality is now met because we've left center. And so it makes that doubt. But strength means determining your way past that doubt, going through it, going over to the four spheres, taking the power in your hand intentionally and moving on up, moving on up, moving on up, and bing, it lights up, right? So that's the advice. The advice is take the power in your hand, go forth and do the job that you're doing. This is 5 cards on the Tree of Life. These are the Thoth Hermes Tarot deck. This is a tarot reading based on correspondences with the Tree of Life, the Kabbalah. I'm David Fox. I have been your host. Nice to meet you, and see you again.